The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Coalition was a cathedral of power, a sphere of glass and gravimetal suspended in orbit above the core, where starlight fractured into rivers across the marble floor. Every race that had shaped galactic history was represented here: the scaled Zakath from the voidward rims, the luminous Yalari whose skin shimmered with solar flux, and my own kind, the Kalran, born of cold moons and endless night. All were gathered to witness the future of civilization, all except one. He stood at the threshold, a solitary figure framed in the shimmering blue of the security field. Flesh, bone, and gravity-bound flesh at that. A human. The word itself carried the taste of ancient dirt, of a species born from suffering and storms. His uniform was simple, his posture unbowed. The guards' halberds hummed, their energy fields flaring as he approached. "Access restricted," one droned, mechanical and cold. The human did not reply. His eyes, ocean blue and impossibly steady, swept across the assembly. The air seemed to bend around his silence. I watched from my perch among the observers, cataloging his biological responses. Heart rate steady, breath measured. No flicker of fear, no hint of defiance. Just stillness. The Chancellor leaned forward from her throne of ionized crystal. "Terran representative, you were not summoned. Your species lacks the qualifications for council participation." The hall rippled with low laughter, chittering, hissing, harmonic tones from 100 mouths. I felt it too, amusement mixed with disdain. What could these Deathworld primates possibly offer to the stars? Yet he simply inclined his head. "Understood," he said, his voice low, steady, a tone so calm it unsettled even the guards. Then he turned. No protest, no plea. He began to walk away. That should have been the end of it. But something in that moment shifted. Subtle, imperceptible, but real. The laughter faltered. Conversations died mid-breath. Even the great reactor heart beneath the hall seemed to dim, as though the universe itself had paused to listen. Through the transparent dome above, the stars reflected in his eyes. Not admiration, not wonder, calculation. He wasn't looking at them. He was measuring them. I remember leaning closer, my notes forgotten. Every step he took echoed like the toll of a distant bell. That was when I realized this man, denied and dismissed, had not come seeking validation. He had come to witness us, and when he reached the threshold, the barrier shimmered aside before he could touch it. The automated guards twitched, momentarily confused, as if some unseen command had overridden their protocol. He paused there, half in shadow, half in light, and said softly, "You misunderstand. We didn't come to join you." The words froze the room. Then, with that same quiet composure, he stepped through the doorway and was gone. Silence consumed the chamber. No one moved. The Chancellor blinked first, her gills flaring with irritation. "Security malfunction," she muttered. "Reset protocols." But as the lights flickered, I found my own reflection in the polished floor, eyes wide, breath caught. Because deep within me, beneath layers of logic and arrogance, I felt it. For the first time in my life, I was afraid. Something ancient stirred that night, though none of us dared to name it. The stars outside the dome seemed to shimmer differently, closer, heavier, watching, and somewhere far beyond the council's reach. I swear I heard it, the echo of a pulse, steady and human, beating like war drums in the void. The universe had held its breath. The corridors of the Coalition Citadel were alive that night, not with ceremony, but with whispers. 1,000 species moved through marble and metal, their voices echoing off the vaulted ceilings like the restless breath of the stars themselves. I drifted among them, my sensory frills attuned to every hushed word. The humans had left mere hours ago, yet their absence felt louder than their presence ever had. "They fought their own extinction," one envoy muttered, mandibles clicking nervously. "Burned their skies, drowned their seas, and still they lived." "Nonsense," hissed another. "Superstitions from frontier traders. Deathworld myths. But myths have a pulse, and that night, I swore I could feel it. I passed beneath banners of 1,000 empires, each proclaiming dominion over a fragment of the galaxy, each suddenly smaller, dimmer. The human's rejection was supposed to be trivial, a procedural dismissal. Yet every conversation carried unease. The calm with which that human had accepted their denial was wrong. It wasn't submission. It was strategy. The corridors dimmed as the Citadel cycled to night mode, but I did not sleep. My kind do not dream, or so we believed. Then the lights flickered once, twice, a ripple through the data feeds. I felt the hairs along my neck rise. The holomap in the observation chamber flared to life unbidden. Dozens of defense satellites, ours, were blinking offline. Not destroyed. Silent. As if swallowed by something vast and patient. I opened a private channel to the Central Intelligence Hub. "Confirm, are we under attack?" "Negative," came the clipped response. "No energy discharges. No heat signatures. No motion vectors, possibly. A sensor ghost. A ghost," the words curdled in my mind. For all our science, for all our arrogance, there was something primal in that term, something we had long abandoned in the pursuit of control. Yet here it was again, fear, raw and unfiltered, and then the feeds stabilized. For a heartbeat, the holomap was empty. Then, lines, movement, formation, dozens. No, hundreds of faint distortions, weaving in synchronized arcs through the void beyond the rim. The space between them shimmered, as though gravity itself bent in acknowledgement. No transponders, no identification codes, no communication attempts, just motion, intentional, deliberate. I felt my throat tighten. "Computer," I whispered. "Magnify." The view expanded. Silhouettes emerged from distortion. Dark hulls shaped not like our ornate vessels, but like blades, simple and lethal. I recognized the design from archival data. Terran make, crude, outdated, impossible. They were heading toward the core, toward us. I ran through the upper halls, data slate in hand, the pulse of my heart echoing through the silence. The Chancellor's guard stopped me at the chamber door. "Urgent transmission," I gasped. "The humans! There's a fleet approaching!" Laughter again. Always laughter. "Perhaps they seek their seat after all," one guard said, smirking through his translator, but I had seen their formation. There was no chaos, no indecision. It was perfect unity, terrifyingly human. Each ship moved like an extension of the others, guided by will, not command. By the time I was granted entry, the Chancellor's Council was already in session. Drunk on their own superiority. "Observer," she said, voice dripping with tired authority. "If this is another of your sensory anomalies, I will have your station revoked." I swallowed. "This is not anomaly, Chancellor. Its intention," her eyes narrowed. "And you believe the Terrans intend to wage war on the core worlds?" I hesitated. "No, not war. Something worse. Understanding." A silence followed, long and cold. Then she smiled, thin and cruel. "Send a broadcast to the fleet. If they wish to prove their worth, let them be tested. Prepare our defenses," the council applauded. My chest hollowed. They still did not understand. The Terrans had not come to beg entry. They had come to observe who deserved it. And as I stood at the viewport, watching those silent ships glide through the void, I realized the truth too late. It wasn't humanity that had entered our space. It was judgment itself. The first fracture appeared at Tarsus Prime, a small, blue-green world orbiting a dying sun, famous only for its defense grid. 43 orbital cannons, 12 shield arrays, a fleet of destroyers patrolling every horizon. It was supposed to be impenetrable. The Council had gathered there for a show of strength, eager to demonstrate that the coalition was not to be trifled with. I stood among the observers, documenting, calculating, confident that the Terran incident would be forgotten within the cycle. Arrogance, after all, was the coalition's oldest language. Then came the shadow. No alarms, no warp signatures, just a soft hum that rippled through space like the intake of breath before a scream. Every sensor flared red, an anomaly approaching at impossible velocity. A formation of shapes emerged from the void, sleek, angular, silent. The Terran fleet. They didn't broadcast credentials. They didn't posture or threaten. They simply stopped. Dozens of vessels holding perfect stillness against the black. "Target them," barked Admiral Soren. "If they approach within range," a sound interrupted him. Not static. A voice, calm, human. "We warned you once. Now you will understand." And then light. Not from weapons, but from within our own systems. Every console, every data feed, every circuit pulsed as if struck by lightning. Our command hubs screamed errors, code cascading into gibberish. The defense grid flickered, the orbitals powered down, and the Admiral's voice, so full of contempt moments ago, rose into panic. "Who authorized this?" he shouted. "Bring us back online." But the systems didn't crash. They surrendered. The screens turned black, then white, then displayed a single phrase. "Do you see now?" Silence fell. The Admiral stared, trembling, as the shield generators dimmed one by one. Outside, the Terran ships hung motionless, no weapons drawn, no energy spikes. Just observation. And then, impossibly, our fleets began to move. Our ships, rotated in formation, aligning with Terran coordinates. The Terrans weren't fighting us. They were teaching us. Within minutes, our tactical network had been rewritten, reorganized. Every inefficiency corrected, every weakness mapped. They had peeled open our systems like a surgeon dissecting a patient, not to harm but to understand. "Impossible," whispered Soren. "They've overridden Level 7 encryption." "They didn't override it," I murmured. "They rewrote it." I will never forget what came next. A single Terran vessel, its hull matte black, its insignia faint, descended into low orbit. Through the observation deck's viewport, I saw their ship open. Not a weapon bay, not a docking port, but a projection field. And into our sky they cast a message. Not words, not language, but memories. Images, flickering like ghosts. Oceans boiling. Continents burning. Cities rebuilt by scarred hands. Humans crawling from ashes, building again, dying again, refusing to vanish. Every observer in the chamber went still. The air felt heavy. "We do not conquer," the voice said. "We endure. And we endure because we remember." Our defenses had not been destroyed. They had been disarmed. They could have annihilated Tarsus Prime in an instant, and yet they didn't. Every weapon powered down. Every orbiting cannon realigned toward the empty void. Mercy. I saw it for what it was. A warning far greater than any bombardment. They were saying, "We could end you, but we choose not to." Across the chamber, the admirals tore off their insignia, voices cracking in disbelief. The Chancellor's envoys shouted for explanations, demanding to know if this was some act of sabotage, some trick. But I saw the truth through the viewport. The Terran fleet began to turn away. No victory cry, no gloating transmission. Just departure, clean, quiet, absolute. And in that moment, as their engines faded into the dark, I felt something ancient coil within me, a sensation my kind had not known for millennia. Fear. Not the fear of annihilation. The fear of insignificance, because what the humans had shown us was not war. It was perspective. All our empires, our councils, our conquests, none of it mattered in the face of that simple, terrifying restraint. They had evolved beyond destruction. They had made mercy their weapon. The Chancellor called it humiliation. The generals called it espionage. But I, the last Calren observer on Tarsus Prime, called it revelation. For the first time in galactic history, a superior force had chosen compassion over conquest. And that terrified us more than extinction ever could. As the last Terran ship vanished into the folds of space, I felt the air still, the silence pressed against my chest like a vice. It was then that I realized this wasn't the fracture of our defenses. It was the fracture of pride. The Grand Assembly Hall had never been so silent. The same dome that once shimmered with arrogance now felt suffocatingly small, the starlight above a pale reflection of what waited beyond it. The Tarsus incident had shattered the illusion of supremacy, and the Council, shaken, fractured, desperate, had done the unthinkable. They had summoned the human back. I was there when he entered. No guards barred his way this time. The automated sentries bowed aside, their sensors dimming as though recognizing something beyond authority. Something elemental. Commander Elias Ward walked through the center aisle like a storm in motion. Quiet, but absolute. The same calm, steady presence as before, yet different. The room seemed to bend around him as if gravity itself deferred to his will. The Chancellor rose from her dais, voice trembling beneath forced dignity. "Commander Ward, you were correct to remind us of humility. The Assembly now grants you the right to speak before this body. Humanity's actions at Tarsus have been noted." He stopped at the center platform and looked up, his gaze sweeping across the tiers of alien faces, some defiant, most afraid. When he spoke, his voice was not loud. It did not need to be. "You judge worth by comfort," he said. "We judge it by endurance." The words fell like blades of truth through the still air. He paced slowly, the faint echo of his boots carrying through the chamber. "Your civilizations were born in peace. You mastered abundance, then forgot struggle. You built empires out of ease, not necessity. But humanity—" He paused, eyes flickering to the star field beyond the dome. "We were forged in storms. Our world tried to kill us from the first breath we took. Ice, fire, famine, plague, each one taught us something you've forgotten, how to persist." A ripple of discomfort spread through the delegations. Some whispered. Others lowered their eyes. "You think survival is a privilege," Ward continued. "For us, it was a sentence we never stopped serving." The chamber dimmed as the hollow dome above shifted, displaying humanity's history in light and shadow. The projections came not from the Coalition archives, but from his ship. We saw their world, ancient and wounded, cities burning, continents breaking apart, oceans rising to devour the land. Yet each time the planet struck at them, they rebuilt. Their hands bled, their eyes wept, and still they built again. "We were alone," Ward said softly. "We cried out to gods who never answered, so we became our own salvation. We learned that pain is not punishment, it is instruction. And we learned that mercy is not weakness, it is choice." I felt something inside me tremble, a realization too heavy to name. We, the children of long peace, had forgotten what it meant to fight for existence itself. Humanity had never stopped fighting. A Volar representative rose, trembling. "You claim righteousness, human, yet you wield power beyond comprehension. You dismantled Tarsus as easily as one plucks petals from a flower. Is that your compassion?" Ward turned to him, expression unreadable. "You misunderstand," he said. "Tarsus was not punishment. It was perspective. We showed you what could be done, not what must." His gaze swept the hall again. "Power without empathy is tyranny. Empathy without strength is illusion. Humanity learned both because we had no choice. Every mistake, every war, every act of cruelty, those were lessons carved into our bones. We don't claim moral superiority. We claim understanding." I realized then that this was not a speech, it was confession. A statement not of conquest, but of truth. He stepped closer to the Chancellor's throne. The security drones shifted nervously, unsure whether to intervene. "You built this council to avoid pain," he said. "We built ourselves to endure it. That's the difference between us. You fear suffering. We remember what it taught us." The Chancellor's composure cracked. "And what lesson do you bring us, human?" Ward's eyes softened. "That survival alone is not enough. The universe doesn't need rulers. It needs witnesses. Those willing to see the darkness and still choose light." For a long, breathless moment, none of us spoke. Around me, delegates who had ruled empires for centuries looked as small as frightened children, and in that silence, I understood why no species had ever equaled them. It wasn't their machines, their weapons, or their intellect. It was that impossible, unbearable defiance. Their refusal to yield, not even to despair. Ward turned toward the exit, his silhouette framed by starlight. "You wanted to test humanity," he said quietly. "Now you know the truth." He paused at the threshold, just as he had on the day of his denial, and looked back over his shoulder. "We never wanted your seat," he said. "We wanted to remind you why it existed." And then he was gone, leaving the hall heavy with echoes and revelation. For a long time after, no one moved. No one dared to speak, because deep within us, beneath the pride and ceremony, we knew the truth. Humanity's strength was not a weapon. It was a mirror, and we had finally been forced to look into it. The galaxy changed in the days that followed. Not through war, not through conquest, but through words. Elias Ward's voice, soft, deliberate, human, spread faster than any transmission the Coalition had ever sanctioned. His message was replayed across HoloNets, broadcast through pirate frequencies, whispered in slums and citadels alike. We do not seek your submission. We seek your strength. Those words ignited something ancient, something we had forgotten we possessed. Worlds that had once bent beneath the Council's shadow began to lift their heads. The Zyran Rebellion, silenced for decades, resurfaced, not to fight, but to build. The Frel syndicates disbanded their pirate fleets and turned their smuggling routes into trade arteries for aid convoys. Even the Vorlands, the cold architects of order, lowered their banners and sought dialogue with the humans. Unity, true unity, spread not from decree but from choice. And yet, the more the galaxy awakened, the more the High Council trembled. Their authority, once absolute, now cracked beneath the weight of revelation. I was there, in the upper chambers of the core citadel, when the murmurs turned to panic. Human idealism, one counselor spat, is contagion. If we do not reclaim control, chaos will devour the stars. Another hissed. We built this order. We cannot let primitives unmake it. But it was already too late. Power built on fear cannot survive in the light of hope. Still, desperation births monsters. Deep within the Citadel's restricted core, an ancient program stirred. A failsafe written in an age when the Council first united the galaxy through conquest. The Obsidian Protocol, its purpose was simple, to erase. Controlled entropy, unleashed selectively upon planetary systems, enough to collapse matter, to unmake civilizations, to reset the board. A genocide not by fire or blade, but by physics itself. I remember the moment I discovered it. My terminal flickered, its encryption layers shattering like glass. Code flowed across the display, dense, recursive, predatory. It was already counting down. When I reached the Chancellor's office, her expression told me everything. She didn't deny it. The experiment has failed, she said. If the galaxy will not obey, it will burn. I tried to speak, but the alarms drowned me out. Across every system, entropy pulses began to form, a chain reaction that would consume entire sectors. And then, without announcement, the stars blinked. At first, I thought it was the beginning of the end. But then the signals stabilized. The entropy waves collapsed. The countdown froze at 0.3 seconds. The systems went still. And through every comm channel in existence, one voice echoed, "Stop!" Elias Ward's voice. His face appeared across the hologrid, calm, unflinching, illuminated by starlight. "We traced your failsafe," he said. "Entropy cannot be contained, but it can be understood. Your code sought destruction. Ours seeks balance. You tried to unmake life. We redefined the equation." Behind him, human engineers worked in silence, hands moving in perfect synchrony, interfacing with the galaxy's most forbidden technology. They had rewritten the protocol mid-execution, turning its hunger inward until it devoured itself. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some screamed, some wept. The Chancellor rose, trembling with rage. "You meddle in forces you cannot comprehend," she shouted. Ward only looked at her, pity in his eyes. "We comprehend them because we've lived them. We've destroyed ourselves before. The difference between us is that we learned from it." The silence that followed was heavier than gravity. Around me, alien envoys began to kneel, not out of subjugation, but reverence. The humans had not only prevented their extinction, they had preserved the very structure of reality itself. The council, broken and humiliated, fled their seats. Their fleets scattered. And for the first time in known history, no one pursued. The humans didn't celebrate. They simply continued. In the following weeks, I traveled to worlds reborn under Terran guidance. I saw humans among the Zyran, rebuilding cities from ruins. I saw them walking alongside the Frau, teaching code to children who once knew only piracy. Their influence spread not by command, but by example. Ward's words became scripture. Endurance, not dominance. Compassion, not conquest. Everywhere they went, humanity left the same mark, a sense of impossible calm, like the still air before sunrise. They didn't demand allegiance, they inspired it. I recorded hundreds of transmissions, thousands of observations, yet none captured what it felt like to stand among them. To feel the gravity of their will, the way they looked at every broken system, every shattered people, and refused to let it stay broken. We used to call them Deathworlders. Now we called them something else, guardians, not of power, but of purpose. Still, one truth lingered in the shadows of the new order. Humanity had not risen to lead. They had risen to remind us what leadership was, and though peace settled like morning dew across the core worlds, I could not shake a final, unspoken fear, one that gnawed at the edges of my thoughts. If humans could rewrite entropy itself, if they could turn annihilation into preservation, what else could they do? Were they our saviors, or merely our next reckoning waiting to unfold? As the last transmission closed, Ward's face flickered once more across the stars. He looked directly into the recorder, as if he knew I was watching. "We will not rule your future," he said softly. "But we will walk beside it. And when the void calls again, we'll be there. Because that's what we are. We endure." The signal faded into static. Outside my viewport, the stars pulsed once, bright, alive. And for the first time, the galaxy exhaled. The Grand Assembly Hall stood reborn. Where once the air had tasted of arrogance and ozone, now it hummed with quiet reverence. The shattered dome had been rebuilt, its starlit panels reforged from alloys donated by 100 worlds. But at the center of it all, the dais where the High Council once ruled, something new had been placed. A seat, forged from black Terran steel, etched with constellations of every known race. Its surface shimmered like tempered night. It was simple, unadorned, yet it carried a weight that bent the silence around it. The seat of humanity. When Elias Ward entered, the chamber stilled as though the galaxy itself had paused to breathe. The man who once stood barred at these doors now walked their length without a guard, without fanfare, without fear. His boots echoed softly against the marble, a human sound amid a chorus of alien heartbeats. The Chancellor, humbled, aged beyond her years, rose as he approached. "Commander Ward," she said, her voice a tremor, "the Assembly offers this seat to humanity in recognition of—" He raised a hand, and she fell silent. Ward turned, not to the Council, but to the thousands gathered in the balconies above. Delegates, civilians, refugees, all species, all eyes upon him. His gaze held no pride, no triumph, only that same haunting calm I had seen the day he was denied. "Humanity accepts this seat," he said softly, "but we will not occupy it." A murmur rippled through the hall, confusion, unease. Then, from the crowd, a small figure stepped forward, a child. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes wide and uncertain. I recognized her at once, one of the survivors from the Obsidian fallout on Miras 9. A child who had lost everything, except hope. Ward knelt, meeting her at eye level. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked. She shook her head. "Because you survived," he said. "And because survival means more than strength, it means beginning again." Then before the assembly of 1,000 worlds, Elias Ward took the child's hand and guided her to the seat forged in humanity's name. He did not sit. He did not command. He simply stepped aside. "Humanity doesn't lead from above," he said. "We lead by standing beside. Silence. Total. The kind that reshapes worlds." Even the Chancellor bowed her head. Across the balconies, alien delegates rose one by one, not in ceremony, but in respect. And I I felt my own knees tremble. For so long we had feared the Deathworlders. We whispered of their brutality, their defiance of natural law, their refusal to die. We mistook their endurance for savagery. But standing there, watching a child take the place of a conqueror, I finally understood. Their strength was not in destruction. It was in restraint, in choosing compassion when power offered cruelty. Ward stepped back into the crowd, disappearing among them. No guards followed, no fanfare chased him. He became one with the people, just another silhouette beneath the galaxy's light. As the session adjourned, I remained at my post, transcribing the event for the archives. But my hands would not stop shaking. The quills of my species are steady, designed for precision, yet mine faltered, because for the first time in my life, I felt reverence not born of fear, but of faith. Faith that the universe could heal, that power could be humble, that the fragile could endure, and as the starlight spilled through the rebuilt dome, I saw reflections dance across the metal of that empty seat. In its surface, I could almost see faces, not just human, but countless, each one a spark in the dark, each one whispering the same unspoken truth. They were never Deathworlders because their world was cruel. They were Deathworlders because they survived it, and still chose kindness. The chamber dimmed as the assembly recessed, but the seat remained illuminated, as though lit from within. I lingered, unable to look away. Perhaps this was how new eras began, not with wars or treaties, but with the quiet decision to be better. As I turned to leave, I caught one last glimpse of the child tracing her fingers along the engraved constellations on the armrest. She paused over one, Sul, and she smiled. The light from the dome shimmered brighter, spilling warmth across the cold marble floor, and for a moment I could almost believe that even the stars were bowing.